Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Halo video, and today we will be discussing the Forerunners and some of their inadequacies, to put it lightly. And you know what? For once, I'm not actually picking on any 343 era content. I'm actually just looking at how the Forerunners acted based largely on material from the original Halo trilogy. Before we continue though, today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. I'm sure you guys know Squarespace. They provide everything that you could possibly need to make your own website without you having to be a computer science professional. And that's everything from the actual tools to build the website to analytics, marketing, and more. More about Squarespace later on in the video. Alright, so let's give a brief overview of what happened to the Forerunners, because they're not around during the events of the Halo trilogy, at least not in any significant number. So what happened? Well, the very brief story is that the Forerunners were an incredibly advanced alien race, in a galaxy actually of advanced alien races, including ancient humanity, who came into contact with a parasite known as the Flood. Now, if you're watching this video, presumably you already know what the Flood is, but essentially, it is a biological entity which transforms organic matter into the Flood. Flood infections generally become more potent and deadly the longer they go on and the more biomatter they consume, with Flood creating central intelligences like grave mines or more. Anyway, the Forerunners attempted a lot in their war with the Flood, which, by the way, lasted several hundred years. However, at some point it became clear that the Forerunners could not secure a conventional victory and created the Halo Array. Well, sort of. There's more to that, but just for the purposes of this video, they created the Halo Array, a super weapon which, combined with other megastructures like the Ark, would destroy the Flood and leave the galaxy ripe to be reseeded so that organic non-Flood life could have another try. Many species, including humanity, were stored at the Ark, which was outside the firing range of the Halo rings, and were eventually returned to their worlds where they would advance to the interstellar empires and factions that we all know and love, including the various Covenant races and, as I said, humanity. The Forerunners were big on preservation, even when facing the existential threat that was the Flood. They believed that they held the mantle, a stewardship of other life throughout the galaxy. After being forced to rely on their super weapons, the Forerunners passed the mantle to humanity, giving them not only this custodianship of all life in the galaxy, but also the status of reclaimers, and thus the ability to use Forerunner technology. However, before firing the Halo rings, the Forerunners also recognized even this desperate act would not stop the Flood for good. The Flood came from outside the Milky Way, thus their origin was outside the range of the Halo rings, and thus Flood could still remain not destroyed by the cleansing pulse. And just as a bit of clarity, do the rings actually kill Flood or just their food? Well, in Halo CE, Cortana says specifically that the rings kill the food of Flood, i.e. living things. Other sources have said it's actually any being with a nervous system, which would include at the very least the more advanced Flood forms. There are other bits that you can interpret as suggesting that everything within the range of the rings is killed. My sort of headcanon is, as I just alluded to, a sufficiently advanced Flood form will die, but the smaller cells and maybe even infection forms will not. Anyway, sorry for that tangent. As part of their preservation protocols, the Forerunners also saved samples of the Flood. The facility that you visit in 343 Guilty Spark in Halo CE is known as a Flood containment facility because it does just that. It was meant as a center for research and holding of Flood specimens to further scientific progress. The Flood in these facilities actually survived the firing of the Halo rings, presumably because the Forerunners wanted to give humanity, the Reclaimers, the ability to study them and prepare for a future Flood infestation. Alright, there's a bit of a problem there. And this is where the issue comes in. The Flood, of course, are an extremely advanced organism, and they can only be stopped with an incredible amount of preparation. Thus, even a Flood containment facility that is not properly locked down can literally wipe out an entire species and lead to a galaxy-wide Flood infestation. Why is that? Well, let's look at how the Flood operates. They collect biomass, they become intelligent, and then eventually they do things like repair starships and travel to other planets, and as they do that, the danger continues to grow. For example, in Halo 2, exposure to a flood infection ends up leading to the entire infestation of High Charity, and the flood making it as far as Earth and the Ark. So yeah, there's a significant degree of risk here, a risk that the Forerunners just did not prepare for. And by locking these flood in the containment zones or these secure research facilities like the one in Halo CE or in Halo 2, the Forerunners have eventually doomed their inheritors to facing off against another large-scale flood disaster. The main problem is there's no real technological barrier of entry for accessing the flood on a ring world. The hardest thing you have to do is find the ring world itself. Both Covenant and humanity were easily able to access the flood on Installation 04. I mean, all they had to do was break through a few doors. They did so independently of each other, and yeah, that's a problem. On Delta Halo, it seems like the flood were never fully locked down. If you had the technology to find the ring, well, you had the technology to get yourself in serious problem with an intergalactic level threat. The problem is the Forerunners didn't really make the rings very difficult to find. Even after the firing of the Halo array, Forerunner technology remained easily accessible and was very plentiful throughout the galaxy. Cortana was able to find Installation 04 through an analysis of several Forerunner artifacts. So really the only technological requirement is that you're interstellar and you have the language ability to decipher these codes, something humanity did, but apparently the Covenant did not. Once you're on the ring, it's just a combination of getting unlucky and putting explosives on a door, really. Still, I think the goal of the Forerunners did make sense. Give humanity, the reclaimers and the new holders of the mantle, the ability to prepare for the flood without having to face a whole crisis. But there are better ways they could have went about it. There should have been some sort of hurdle that humanity would have had to surpass to prove itself worthy of facing even a very limited flood threat. One option that I like is to do something like lock flood behind a series of black holes and make it so humanity can only access them after they've proved very technologically capable. The problem is super advanced races are in a way perhaps more susceptible to the flood, but I do think that's a better option. Alternatively, the Forerunners were very capable of defending things on their own. We see, for example, Onyx, which is created out of trillions of Sentinels. Not only are these Sentinels deadly, but they're also capable of recognizing Reclaimers who have a familiarity with technology, so maybe lock the flood samples on Onyx or another shield world. And you've also got the added benefit there that any Covenant forces or other alien races who approach the planet who aren't humanity can be wiped out, because we do actually see a ship crash land on Installation 04. That could have been a problem. Another hurdle could have been the requirement to show a level of understanding of what the flood are. Maybe have the flood locked behind some sort of monitor, require humanity to truly understand Forerunner teachings before just giving them access to the Forerunner's greatest enemy. Maybe instead of having the flood stored on the rings, they've got clues on the rings which you can only decipher if you've got a true understanding of Forerunner technology and their history, so that by the time you encounter the flood, you at least know what's going on. Ultimately, I think a combination of these two approaches would have been best and would have either on their own been significantly better than just putting the flood behind a pretty small door and hoping for the best. But guys, that's all I have for today. I kind of wonder what's going on from a flood standpoint on the other Halo rings. We know that's something the UNSC Infinity was looking into before the events of Halo 4. I can't remember how many they fully surveyed, but there's definitely still flood in the galaxy, and humanity or some remnant of the Covenant is definitely going to run into it in the future. Alright guys, so as I mentioned, today's video is sponsored by Squarespace, and Squarespace provides everything you need to build and manage your web presence. Building a website with Squarespace is easy, but there's also a ton of advanced features and analytics that you can take advantage of. For example, on your website you can have member-only areas as a way to generate revenue. People have to pay to access that content. Or say you're a creator or you do work offline, you can embed videos directly onto your website, while also of course connecting your social media accounts. And if you're not sure where to begin design-wise, Squarespace also has best-in-class website templates made to fit your needs. Right now, you can head to squarespace.com/EckhartsLadder to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using the code EckhartsLadder. Anyway, guys, that's all for today. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you guys for watching. Until next time, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.